Hello. My name is Kristen, and I am obsessed with all things play-based and child-led learning. Truly obsessed. I am here to help you navigate the messy and the magical on your journey to a play-based program. It is truly magical on the other side, and I want you to feel each day what I feel when I walk into my classroom. I am the homeschool mama to 4. I'm the founder of a play and nature-based preschool and forest school, and I am here to cheer you on. I'm ready. Are you ready? Let's get going. All right. Here we go. I have Lisa Murphy on the show today, and today we are talking about themes in early childhood education programs.
Super popular this week. I'm not sure why.
Really? Where else has it popped up?
Like social media popping up. People want to talk about it. People have misunderstandings about what it really means. So yeah, when you were like, hey, want to talk about this? I was like, yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about this. Okay, so themes. So it came up in my world, in part of my play-based learning troop that I have on Facebook.
A Girl Scout troop? That's awesome. Like really, you're like a Girl Scout troop?
Yeah. Yeah, we have one man though. So we're non-binary. So we're just a troop for all the peoples. So it came up when speaking about themes and like how to plan in an early childhood education program that's play-based, child-led, child-centered. And one of the participants said, well, so like, because I said something about dinosaurs and they're like, do you do always dinosaurs? And I was like, yeah, we have some dinosaur stuff. And then I started to feel like self-conscious of it. I was like, why? Well, kids love dinosaurs. And the guy, he goes, well, all the play-based people, like the pure play people are like, you can't do dinosaurs because they're not something tangible to touch and feel and smell and taste and hold.
And this is why I said, let's talk about this, because I was so glad, because we often, and I don't know if I was one of the people that this person was alluding to, but I also know, regardless whether it is or not, that we'll often get taken out of context, right? And so I love opportunities to do a little bit of a deeper dive, even if it's just like one sentence of my book. I love that. So to the specific dinosaur example, and quite honestly, it could be with anything. It could be with snowmen. It could be with anything.
Yes.
I'm always going to ask the teachers, the educators, the caregivers to come back to whose idea was it? And I know you knew where I was going to go with that. It's not that a theme. So let's even back it up. Let's not even get that specific. Theme-based teaching is not inherently evil or bad, right? But where did those themes come from? Not even
exactly.
Bad, but where did they come from? 52 weeks of, scripted. This is what we've always done. I'd say there's room to maybe investigate that a little bit more. And because, and this is a very multifaceted conversation, because the other reality is that you could hire somebody to work in our 100% play-based programs. But if their experience has only been in really hyper rigid controlled, you can't just say, go teach playfully, because they have nothing to hold on to. Right. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So they end up not doing anything because their only experience has been at the end of the day, we don't want them doing. So all we say is we don't want you to do that, but then we don't necessarily guide them as effectively as maybe we should be as to what we are doing. So, is there room for people to be like, well, the kids are really into trucks. All right. So what are you going to do with trucks? Okay. So you still have like a safety harness. It's familiar to you. Because the other thing we know is that everything new is half familiar, right? So what piece of the theme-based comfort level can I allow you to keep without compromising play and developmentally appropriate practice? But yet what is going to encourage you to keep moving on? And I think the baby stepping of like, all right, yeah, sure. You want to talk about that? Okay. How do you know that the kids are interested in that? Oh, well, I heard them over here. And okay, so you have some data and you're going to roll with this. Okay. Here's the first little baby step thing is that it doesn't have to come back to every element in the room, right? I think old school way, like if it's transportation week, we have to have
file folder games
books and stuff at the table, and the dress up area is now a truck stop, or whatever. And okay, so that's the first kind of little maybe softening of that expectation. You want to explore trucks the children have shown you, but let's limit it to what they're really excited about. Maybe that might mean you just need to have a few more trucks in the block area or wherever you keep the trucks, or in the sandbox, or wherever. Or maybe a couple more books, and maybe not even just storybooks, because here's another little stretch. Maybe you find some kind of big, fat, glossy 8.5 by 11 trucks from around the world book. And that one kid is like, so, themes aren't bad. How we often execute and implement them are.
Exactly. And that's what I was trying to get across to the people who I was speaking with, is that
how we do it.
Yes. It's how you choose to do it is now play or not play, or child-centered, not child-centered.
Yes. And to clarify, because I don't think I've been on your podcast. So for your listeners that aren't familiar with me, the asterisk of clarification is that we want to move you to a point where you don't need this anymore, or you don't think that you need to be theme-based in order to be an effective facilitator of a play-based environment, right? And I know that there's a process to getting to that point.
There is a very big process.
So the one thing I will always hold everybody accountable to is my 3 favorite questions. And we should tell them actually the fairy goddaughter story, but we can do that here in a second. What are you doing, and why are you doing it, and who is it for? And quite honestly, even if people don't know who I am, even if people are as far on the other side of the spectrum of play-based as possible, those 3 questions are still effective, I think, tools to have in your tool belt. I even think for parents, I even think for anybody, just in your daily job, whatever that job is, holding yourself accountable to asking those 3 questions, I think is, I don't know, important, or
it is,
or responsible.
Yes. Well, and even in my own life, I ask myself those questions for everything now. And it very much clarifies the way that I go about my daily life, even with my children in homeschool, like everything.
I've told people in the workshops before that, I'm always one for banter. I love Q&A time at a Zoom conference, at a real live in-person conference. Remember the good old days. Right. But I also know that as much as I love facilitating and bantering with you when you have a question that you want to pose to me, I know that for the most part, whoever is asking that question, 9 times out of 10 can end up answering their own question simply by filtering it through the 3 things. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And who is it for? Exactly. I think I like to think of those 3 questions as guardrails. They kind of help keep us bounced into the lane. And there's days that we're a little more to the left of the lane, a little more to the right of the lane, but it still keeps us in the lane. Yeah.
I love that lane analogy. That's a good one. You're so good at this, Lisa.
I know.
Okay. Thanks. What else did you want to spew out about themes? Like, you have thoughts. Okay. You are excited to talk about this.
I have lots of thoughts about it. So, and kind of, okay. So I'll tell you a story, and I love telling this story. It's a little long, but I'm going to tell it. So back in the old days, well, 1, when I was still married, and 2, when I still owned a childcare center, we used to joke that, and this is horrible. It's not horrible, but you'll see why I mean that when I tell you the story. We used to say that we wanted to create 2 actual schools. One school that was being done 100% DAP play, like just at the farthest end of everything ideal that we talk about. And it was happening on Main Street. But then we were going to have another school over on South Main Street that was the complete opposite. That was like letter of the day, number of the day, this of the day, that of the day, themes that have been in place since the beginning of time when the earth was cooling. And you had to work at that school before you got to work at the other school. Now follow my train of thought. This is the most unethical proposition as possible.
But it sounds amazing.
But my thought was this. It was like, that was the minor league. And that was the A league, right? So we got I don't know baseball lingo, but like the show, right? The show is the school on Main Street. The school on South Main Street, that's is the training.
It's like the off Broadway. It's like the community theater project.
It's community theater to Broadway. There you go. That's we have shared language there. So
there we go.
And when I hired you, remember, please, listeners, this is all metaphorical. Yeah. When I hired you, I would be giving you your script. That's your curriculum. This is what you got to do. This is what we do Monday, January 4th. Like it's all spelled out.
Yeah.
And you had to do that. And that's what you did until one day you walked into my office and you threw the damn binder at me and said, how the hell could I possibly know what children are going to be interested in planning 3 weeks in advance, doing the scripted curriculum? And that's when I would secretly clap my hands underneath my desk and say, you are ready to go to the major leagues, right?
You've got a golden ticket.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But how freaking unethical would that be?
But it would be a really cool project. However, I feel really bad for the kids that would have to be in the.
That's why it's unethical. Teachers could figure it out, but but that is really, that's what I'm saying. I'm acknowledging that there's a process, as I've already said. If I just tell you, like when I get called in to help change a school, flip a school, whatever language works for you, to go from a very rigid theme-based 52 weeks of this is how we've always done it to being a little bit more play-based, you can't just say, stop doing that. Mm-hmm. Granted, my ideal goal, as I've already said, is to, if I could, I would rip the rug out from under you. And the reality is that at a lot of places, there are a handful of staff who are ready for you to rip it out. Mm-hmm. So, but for those who aren't, maybe, and I did this for some of my staff, here's a list of things that children typically are kind of interested in. If right now that's the training wheels you need to have on your bike while you're getting more comfortable and acclimated to my philosophical orientation, pick from these, because these historically are going to be things that are a little bit more engaging to children. Now, my ultimate goal is for you to be plucking, if you do any kind of theme, out of what you're observing from the children. The other thing too is that some schools sexy it up and they change the word to like project or investigation, when really it's just themes that somebody else has decided. Like, where did it come from? Right? There's nothing wrong with exploring something for a couple days at a time. I mean, that's the other thing about themes too, is that and this maybe would be one of those baby steps, is that if you have to plan for a theme 3-4 weeks at a time, with the theme rotating, come hell or high water, there's a new theme on Monday. Some of that little baby step flexibility is like, okay, so I started this one theme on Monday, but by Tuesday, I know these kids aren't into that. Maybe I can just let it go for the rest of the week. Like even just that, like I'll be like, okay, that's cool. And then the flip side to that is that, let's say the theme that you started on Monday. Now, granted, it maybe not have been something the kids were interested in, but for whatever reason, the kids became interested in it.
Right.
Then you keep it going.
Exactly.
Right. So I think there's workarounds even within a very rigid traditional program. There could be some workarounds. And the only phrase that I've coined so far is how do I make this as developmentally inappropriately appropriate as possible? Right? Always wanting to keep pointing out the ideal, and not even ideal like some utopian ideal, like ideal as in, this is what the research says, and this is what we know is best practice. This is what we know children actually need, and that there's going to be, stepping stones to get there.
Okay.
So I've talked for an hour, so you talk now.
Okay, so going back to dinosaurs. So, one thing that floats around a lot in the early childhood play circles is Bev Boss's has to be in the heart and the hands in order to be in the head. Am I forgetting one? Is there one more?
If you want it in the head, it has to be in their hands. And it's not going to be in their hands if it's not in their heart. True.
Okay. Okay. So
but
going back to
talking about it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So then going back to a dinosaur. If you can't hold a real dinosaur in your hands.
And I have to make it no, I'm glad that you circled back to that. So I have to make it as developmentally inappropriately appropriate as possible. But again, let's go back to my question. Whose idea was it to start investigating, exploring, whatever you want to call dinosaurs? Did that come from the kids? Or did it me saying it's D week and dinosaur and kids love dinosaurs? They're so much fun. Okay, that's kind of shallow. Mm-hmm. So let's dig a little deeper.
Let's dig deeper. Okay, so say it did come from the kids.
Sure.
Because that happens all the time in my program.
It does. And here's this is a little more subtle, and it's a little bit maybe more down the path towards the ideal. Is not everything a kid says needs to be hijacked into some kind of teachable freaking moment. I don't know if you swear on your podcast. I've been trying to mind my manners. So it doesn't just because 5 kids are having some kind of dino party over there doesn't mean that you need to hijack it. Leave it alone.
Exactly.
Where, and that comes back to my 3 questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And who is it for? What is happening over here that leads you to believe that you actually even have to be involved in that? Like, why are you, that's your ego. That's Bev. That's your ego thinking that somehow you have to add to this, modify it, redirect it. Leave it alone. It's not yours. Mm-hmm. Just because you're bigger and you're older doesn't mean you know better.
Right. So then at what point do we say, this is recurring and let's add some more things?
Couple 3 days.
Yeah.
Depending on the age of the children, right? Because that's, I mean, that's part of that reflective piece. At the end of the day, I might look out my little journal and write down, a bunch of kids were really interested in dinosaurs today, but I'm also going to do my detective homework. Did the T-Rex tour come through the museum? Did all of these children somehow go see this? Was there a movie? Was there a show? Like, I'm looking to all of that. What I say, my shorthand is this a one-hit wonder, or is this something the kids really are into and interested in unpacking? And I'm not really going to know that until I give it enough time to see if it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if that middle piece is going on for a couple more days, I might just say something over lunch or snack, like, y'all been really talking about dinosaurs a lot. And period. And see where that goes.
And then just exactly.
Because that's strategy too. You've been talking about dinosaurs. And if they're like, yeah, okay. Or if they've been like, yeah, and you know what? This one really eats, I'm going to be looking for an organic entry point. I'm not assuming that there is an entry point. I never assume that I have to be involved at all.
Right.
And that is where, and this is a different conversation that you and I maybe want to have at some point. That's where I think everybody in early childhood needs to break up with calling themselves a teacher.
Ooh, what would you call? What would you want to be called?
We are a facilitator of early childhood educational environments. At the end of the day, I think lock and loading and just like bulldog biting on teacher. I appreciate it. It adds a sense of competency. It adds a sense perhaps of respect. I get that. And I think I don't even think people realize it. It keeps us locked and loaded on that mug jug. I'm bigger. I know more. I'm the adult. I know things, and it's my job to teach you things. And I don't think that's our job at all. I think occasionally there's room for some kind of direct instruction, but not because I think you should know something, but because something's unfolding. And again, I'm running it through the 3 questions. You are really, really wanting to tie your shoes. And I can see that you're getting frustrated. Now, a little insight to Lisa Murphy. I will see if I can connect them with a peer before I reinforce the notion that only adults know how to do stuff. I mean, getting to ZPD and zone of proximal development and scaffolding and all of that, which is another thing. But I'm going to be standing back. I'm going to be like, okay, y'all are interested in dinosaurs. Well, actually, I wouldn't even say that because I don't know you're interested in it. I would say what I saw. You have been talking a lot about dinosaurs. You've been like all over the room with dinosaurs, and then see where it goes.
Okay, so question now. One thing that happens, it's kind of like the and it could be tied up more in like something that is kind of native to Minnesota and part of our community culture, part of the culture of our classroom, is that every January there are some eagles that lay eggs in a nest, and there's a camera on that nest. And because we're a nature preschool, what are you pointing at? Are you
the eagle nest in my backyard? And I think their baby actually has already been born because I saw, you know, they're all brown, as you know, they're not multicolored. They look like falcons.
Yes.
They look like hawks. And there's been a non-flying all brown bird flopping around already. And I was like, I think that's a little early. You can hear right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, they're squeaking out there right now, but
that is so cool. So I'm fascinated with it, but also I feel like sometimes because I'm so fascinated with it and I have so much excitement over it, and it's like something that, I feel horrible because it comes back to me, and it's like, I love this, so I think you should love this, but I'll turn the Eagle Cam on and I'll just let it sit there on. And then if kids notice it and say, what's this? I'll explain to them. But that's really all I do. I turn on the iPad, let the Eagle Cam sit there. Some of them have been in the program before, so they know what it is, and they'll start talking to each other about it. And then pretty soon, like, we have eagles on the brain for like 2 months. And it happens every year because I put that iPad out there. But
see, the intention, go back to the intention, right? You're an actor. We get that language. My intention is not one of teaching you about eagles. My intention is not one of it's E week or B week for birds. You know, it's that's us. I think there's room, in all honesty, there's room for us to bring ourselves and our personas into the classroom without needing it to turn into teaching
at them, filling them up with knowledge that you think they need to know.
Right.
And I think that's what the iPad, like, it sparks wonder and it sparks curiosity and it's like exciting, and it's the things that they learn about nature and the life cycle. And we've seen babies die, and we've seen them eat snakes in the nest, and we've seen them bring bunnies that are still like kicking into the nest.
Dude, last week, and this is why I actually honestly think that there is the baby up there already. Within 3 days, we saw them. Literally, my backyard is the runway to the nest. I can see it right now.
Oh my gosh.
They had a cat on Tuesday and a possum on Thursday. I've not really ever noticed. I'm like, somebody up there is hungry.
They totally have a baby up there. Oh my gosh. Have you talked to the neighbors to see, like, now I'm like into this. You're gonna have to take a picture and send it to
where
me.
we are, with where this is a whole other episode. With where we are,
sorry guys,
they actually had to stop building the development once because it's protected. So once they identified that there was an eagle's nest there, literally we're now on a court. They turned it into a court as opposed to building 6 more houses because the eagles are there. And they come every year. It's the same pair.
That is so cool.
Last year we watched them teach the baby how to fly. We saw them scuffling for food. Oh yeah, it's amazing. We see tourists come by, like, I don't know how that happens. Like, they'll walk because there's a golf course, and they'll walk through our yard, and they're out there with their binocs, you know,
the birders.
Like, you know, what do they sound like? I'm like, you hear that speaking at 5 a.m. At 5 a.m. They're like a clockwork. They're my alarm clock. Yeah.
Well, and so with the eagles at preschool, we have forest school too. So we go off site, and on the way to forest school, there are 2 huge eagle nests on the way out. And we see the eagles sitting there every time we go out and back, especially now, which the mating season. Yeah. And
But it's there. Okay, so let's
there.
unpack that. It's there. It's a part. There's going to be, the law of thirds. There's going to be one or two kids that are like gaga goo goo over it, just like you are. There's going to be other kids who are like, man, this is kind of interesting. I don't have this in my house, but they kind of buy into the enthusiasm, but it's not because they're being forced to become enthusiastic about it. And then there's going to be another handful of kids who are like, I don't really care at all about this, but acknowledge, like duly noted, and then they get on with their day. Down here, right, which is different than, let's go to a place, and I can't speak to this. I don't know where the eagles would not ever be, but imagine that, like in what geographical region would you never ever see an eagle, but you're like, it's Eagle Week, and you're going to go get from the backyard and make a fake eagle nest and get some kind of freaking puppet, and pretend like it's stupid.
And beaks as clothespins, and then file folder games that have matching the letters to
eggs
the egg.
And the dead cat that gets flown. No, I'm just kidding. But it's not relevant. It's not relevant. It's not real. It's not meaningful. They can't. Let's go back to your Bev quote. It's not in their heart, but it's not because it's not in their heart. It's because it can't be in their hands, and so, and that is true, dear listener. If it is not in their hands, if it is not something that they can manipulate, touch, smell, taste, see, it's hard for adults to wrap their brain around that. But you don't have that cognitive ability to wrap your brain around that level of an abstract thing or a notion until you get much older than the kids that we're typically this age group working with, which can be hard for adults, because we can think as adults about what something might be like, because we have experience. But that might be like XYZ. But I used to live, and I tell this story in one of the books, but I forget which one. I used to live right on the beach, and I would watch grown adults walk out and would say things. I could hear them. They would say, it's so big. And I'm like, it's the freaking ocean. Of course it's big. Well, then you find out, they're from Indiana, or they're from, Missouri. Their point being the Midwest. They've never seen the ocean. They'd heard about it. They see movies about it. They could understand the concept of a big, huge body of water. But even as an adult, there was that element of, and we forget as adults that children are having that moment all the time. So we don't need to force moments on them, because it's happening organically with the stuff that they're naturally exposed to and have the opportunity to have interaction with. We don't need to recreate stuff that's not there. I'm in Florida right now. It's January. If I see one more cut out construction paper snowman with cotton balls glued to it, I'm going to smack it against somebody's face. Whoosh. Like, that's
I feel like I need to make a TikTok video of me being you.
Like backhanding you with your stupid paper. Oh, but it's winter. You live in Miami. There's no snow falling from the sky, nor are there cotton balls falling from the sky. So why are you doing this? Winter in Florida is very different than winter in Minnesota, in California, in Rochester, New York, in Alberta. It's different. Tom Hunter used to say that the more you celebrate what they have in front of them, the smoother that transition to the abstract is going to be. In not so many words. That is not a direct quote. He had a beautiful article that NAYC put in the Young Children years and years and years ago. Rest in peace, Tom Hunter and Bev. Called The Winter Outside My Window.
Okay.
And the winter outside my window, as somebody in whatever state, is going to look different than the winter outside other people's,
we actually just had this conversation in my troop, because one of the gals lives in Texas, and she's like, everybody else in like all the world, not all the world, but and like the Instagram accounts that she follows or the Facebook groups, they're like doing all these leaf colored projects. And she's like, we still have green. Like they're just now starting to turn, and it's January. So it's going to look different for everybody, no matter where you are, based on your spot in the world.
And that, I'll get on a little bit of a soapbox here. That's why everybody needs to break up with their social media occasionally. You know, I mean, I'm not, a Luddite. We all use social media. That's how we're recording right now. That's how we know each other, for crying out loud. And at the same time, when you find yourself thinking that just because somebody posted something that it is somehow relevant for the children in your program, I want you to take pause and consider that. Is that really accurate? What are you looking for? Is this relevant, real, meaningful? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And who is it for?
Exactly.
All the time. Always.
Well, and I'm totally guilty too, like of Pinterest and Instagram and beautiful photos, and of wanting to, like, I see something and I'm like, ooh, that would be super fun.
Who for?
Right?
Who
exactly.
Needs it? Who needs
exactly.
It?
And that's why I have stopped trying to post. Like, I don't post things like that on my Instagram anymore, because I don't want people saying, ooh, I want to do this, or I want to be that, because you're not that. You're not living in my community. You're not in my classroom culture. Yours is going to look completely different than mine. And so I quit making content like that, because I didn't want people to have
copy.
I think ideas are good, like open-ended ideas are good, but the beautiful photos of all the beautiful loose parts, like mine looks like shit. And I mean, I'll post pictures of that. Like,
it looks used, it looks lived in, it looks real. I mean, that's what it really looks like.
It does.
We're not trying to sexy it up for a couple of likes on the social media.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think so Tom Hunter, Winter Outside My Window, it's called.
Oh my God. And it's probably from 1990.
It's probably still somewhere. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, look it up. Tom Hunter. But just a little bit of a recap, just so the themes, much like the standards. I mean, and I used to riff on this a lot before I met you. So back in the old days, the standards for preschool, pre-K, kindergarten, with the exception of a few states, none of them were actually horrible. There were a few states that were horrible. But most of them weren't horrible. The standards weren't. The methodology that people were using in order to attempt to meet the standards were really what I was questioning. And I would say the same thing with the themes, and also I think the other guardrail that helps here, especially to maybe share with your troop, is if you're claiming to be play-based, then I think with that comes an assumption that you're familiar with Peter Gray. And if you're not familiar with Peter Gray, then you need to be familiar with Peter Gray and his work before you're allowed to claim to be play-based anymore. Because
and can I interject? Because I think my podcast episode 2 or 3 is all on Peter Gray's definition of play. And my troop had to go through a whole entire lesson on Peter Gray's definition of play. So they know it.
Good. I mean, I mean, there's 5 conditions of play. And the first one is that it's freely chosen and you can quit when you're done.
Yep.
Right? So most play-based programs self-proclaimed play-based programs often don't even meet that criteria.
Exactly.
If you are interrupting free play to come to circle, interrupting free play to come do anything else, you're not play-based.
Exactly.
If you have to be at the carpet, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, crisscross applesauce for circle time from 10 to 10:20, you're not a play-based program. Now, where I will share a page from Jeff Johnson's book, not literally his book, but his philosophical book, is the notion that some of those things might be done playfully, but at the core, they're not play.
Exactly. Okay. So you were talking about ESIPs, you were talking about Peter Gray. Did you finish that thought?
I think I did. And if
not, because are you familiar with Minnesota's early childhood indicators of progress?
Were they written after 2016?
No. However, this version is 2017. However, I'm really proud of Minnesota for this, because they talk about play in the very opening, like the very opening of the ESIPs. They preface everything with play.
That's
Says
impressive.
For preschoolers, it is. Play and exploration are the most meaningful ways for children to acquire skills and knowledge, as well as to practice skills and refine understanding of new concepts. Rather than view play as non-academic, effective teachers and providers of preschoolers recognize that high-quality play experiences present many learning opportunities that have long-lasting effects for children. Then it goes on to talk about the research behind it and like what kids get out of play. It is. However, it's like, it makes you wonder, like, I kind of want to know who wrote that, and then wonder, like, what is their definition of play? Because it talks about.
But so to that though, here's where that can be to your advantage. If they haven't specifically told you what their definition of play is, but you and your program have a definition of what play is, then you that's a nice little like backdoor loophole there.
Totally, right?
And also, just as an FYI, there's probably some kind of an acknowledgement page in the back of that as a committee of who wrote that or something like that. Usually they give some kind of credit. And then we need to interview them on your next podcast.
Oh my. There's like, look at all of these.
Oh, look at all that.
There's like a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot of pages. I don't know if your pod is only auditory or if you release footage, but if for you auditory people, she just flipped 4 pages of references. That's good pod right there.
That's good pod. Oh my goodness, that's funny. Okay.
Well, a nod to your state. A nod. Yeah. Seriously.
I know. I was like, I actually show that. And I show that to the parents in our program and make sure that people see that, because then they know that, because
we're not just making this up.
No. And still in our community, we're not mainstream. We are the weird. We are the hippie. We are the program that like plays. And still we have that stigma, and I want us to be mainstream. And this shows that we're mainstream.
It actually shows that you're probably mainstream, and the other programs that have been considered mainstream are outdated.
Exactly.
I like to say my phrase of late in regard to certain things is that it hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
It hasn't aged well. Some of the books we used to read to children haven't aged well. Some of our, misguided rules, regs, thought process, philosophy didn't age well. Time to let it go.
It's time to let it go and let the themes go.
Okay, and the other thing too, and this is kind of, snarky. Who the hell, if you spent all the time, and I actually thought about this on my walk the other day. I was like, how many hours, and I used to do this, we all used to do it back before we knew better. How many hours did we spend one weekend a month, and we'd go and get all the books. Now you get online, but back in the day, there was no internet when I started, right? The dinosaurs were still walking around, just to bump back to that. Anyway, we'd go and we'd get all of these books, whether you got it from the library or your own collection or conferences, you get all this, and I'd pile them in the dining room table. And I would literally just kind of pluck through, make it fit, put it on the calendar, and you would do it. If you took all of those hours, now follow me, because I really think there's either a workshop or an article in here or a strategy or something. The same amount of time that you spent doing that, and you invested it in observing what was actually organically unfolding in the classroom, and then use your observations to then deepen the things that you saw. One, you're doing it on time that you're getting paid for versus time you're not getting paid for. And two, now you have that ego not as invested, right? When you spend 48 hours lesson planning for 6 weeks and then nobody's interested in what you've done, that can be a blow to the ego, right? And then we get get back over here. I spent all weekend getting all this together and prepping all this, sit down.
Cutting the beaks out and the feet out. Yeah.
And I think, it's the same amount of time, but that conversation is and we've all had that conversation of well, I don't feel like I'm doing anything then. When I'm facilitating play, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. Well, there's a big difference between using your observations. You are on the side, you are watching, but you're constantly, your neurons are going crazy because of, somebody's playing with somebody and they've never played, to go, oh my God, that kid is over there. They've never self-selected a book as a choice activity. Oh my God. I'm like, and I'm noticing, and I'm like, how can I deepen this for tomorrow? What can I do without getting in the way? Always in the middle, never in the way, always on the side. That's very different than sitting over in the corner, on your phone. That's disengaged.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's where we're not good at teaching preschool people what we mean by being a facilitator. I mean, some of that does fall on us, and that's a conversation for another time. If we don't paint a clear picture of what we expect, they're going to give us either what they know how to do or the opposite of what they were doing. And that just leaves too much room for interpretation.
Okay, so I think you have your next class or workshop or whatever, how to be a facilitator of play. There you go.
It's chapter 7 of the most recent.
Better done that.
It's chapter 6. Lisa Murphy on being child-centered. There's my shameless plug for
there you go.
ooeygooey.com, ooeygooey.com. My books are published by Red Leaf Press. I have 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how long we've been on, but do you want to tell them the fairy goddaughter story?
I do. I want to wrap up with that. Okay. So, and I have a funny story to tell you after. Okay. So I don't even know how long ago it was. I can't even remember if I told you in person or sent you a message. I think maybe I sent you a message saying that I don't even know how it started. Do you remember?
I think it was just like, you're my fairy godmother. Like, thank you for being my fairy godmother of play or something like that.
Yeah.
Very casual.
So some sort of very casual. Yeah. Just, you're my fairy godmother. And that's what I call you. And that's what I see you as in my head, is this little fairy godmother. And you flit around all over the place in my brain all the time. What are we doing? Why are we doing? Who is it for? So she's my fairy godmother. So I went to a conference, I don't know, in Minnesota somewhere. It was a play conference. And she was going to be there. So I asked if I could bring her coffee. And so when we went through the drive-thru, I said, they asked for the name. It was Starbucks. And so I said, Fareygawdmather. And so I get the cup and I start dying of laughter because it is spelled Fareygawdmather. Fareygawdmather. And we died. We died laughing, and we've never forgotten it since.
Yeah, you're in my phone as Fareygawdmather, Fareygawdmather.
You're in mine as FGM, but I might change it because it's so much more funny. Fareygawdmather. But here's what I found out recently. My daughter Sailor, she said Starbucks, they purposefully spell people's names wrong because then it gets posted on social media and it's free advertising.
Oh my, they're brilliant.
Right.
So here we thought they just didn't know how to spell.
And here we are talking about it years freaking later. That's brilliant marketing.
That's, you know what? That is brilliant. We'll wrap up on that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love having you on. We should do this more. And I actually would love to have a conversation with you about trauma from COVID in childcare centers, because we're dealing with a lot right now in our program. So sometime let's do that.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. I love some of the spontaneous conversations. Are you free? Yes, I'm free. Yes, let's go.
Let's do it. I know. I put my kids on screens. I was like, you go play Among Us or Minecraft. I'm going to go record a podcast. Be quiet.
Well, it worked out well. Thanks, love.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I need you to do me a huge favor. If you liked listening and you want to be able to hear more, can you please go onto iTunes and leave me a 5-star review? I would so appreciate it. And then connect with me on Instagram. It's learning.wild. We'll see you around.
Turn yourself on. There you are.
Hi.
Hey, beautiful. How are you?
What you have? Okay, I want to see if I can get my mic hooked up because I love the sound of yours. And
it really makes a difference, even though I wish it didn't. It does.
Look, mine has a cute haircut.
That is awesome. You know what? You need to give me a haircut. Hello. Thank you very much.
When are you coming to Minnesota next?
Tomorrow.
Okay. Actually, where do you live? Orlando area?
Yeah.
Okay, I might be flying into Orlando in a couple weeks.
Really?
To go to Disney? I could come cut your hair.
You could cut my hair and I'll come to Disney with you, for crying out loud. When are you coming for reals?
So we're trying to decide right now between a weekend in January, like January 20th, or a weekend in February, like the same weekend, because that's when the kids have off of school. We are hosting a foreign exchange student from Basque Country right now.
Because, you know, that's what everybody does during a pandemic.
Right? It was one of those, I mean, you know me. It's like one of those, I heard.
Really?
Okay, here's the story. I'm going to tell you the story. It's a crazy story. My niece in November came to me and said, hey, do you know of anybody who would want a foreign exchange student to come live with them for 6 months? He's really unhappy in the host family that he's in, and he's looking for a new family. I was like, well, tell me about him. So found out like he's 16 and from Basque Country. And I was like, well, he can come live with us. And the next morning,
he's on the doorstep.
Pretty much. So his coordinator called me the next morning and she's like, hi, my name's Karen. And her name really is Karen.
I was going to say, is her name really Karen? Talk to the manager.
So yeah, by the end of the day, I had all the paperwork filled out and he moved in December 9th. It's been so fun.
You know, he's not going to want to go back. He's going to be like, I want to be an early childhood educator. However you say that in Spanish.
Right. I don't know. He's taught me how to swear in Spanish. So I know how to swear now in Spanish. So do all my children.
Fantastic.
That's great. Did my voice change at all? Because
you have to change your microphone.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Go to the mute the microphone and click on the up arrow.
Oh, can you hear me still?
Can.
Does it sound better? Why are you muted? Oh, you're muted.
I was muted on an accident. I was trying to really listen.
I know why. I think
is your
microphone Yeti Nano. Okay. Now I gotta select a speaker. MacBook Pro speaker.
Now talk.
Yes. Does it sound better?
Doesn't sound any different.
Oh, it doesn't sound any different.
Actually, it sounded better before. It's like kind of crispy now when you change the speaker.
Well, that's sad. Oh, I might just have to select a speaker.
Just keep your speaker the same as your system.
Same.
But then choose the whichever microphone. Is it a snowball like mine?
Yeah. No, mine is a Yeti blue.
Okay, so just pick that then. It probably comes up. Yes?
Okay, yep, it came up, but it doesn't sound any different.
It doesn't.
Oh. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll just go. Okay.
And it might sound different to the people who are listening to you.
It might.
Now, tell me, I've not recorded with you for your podcast. What's your MO? Do you like, this is banter, but then you're going to do like a hard start? Like, what do you do?
Oh, no. Yeah. So I'll introduce you and then that's really it. I'll edit it to start where I want it to start.
Got it.
Because it's recording right now. I might just add some of this in.
I don't care what you do.